Okay, welcome to the February 19th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Plymouth Advisory and Finance
Recording in
Committee, right here in the
progress.
Great Hall in Plymouth Town Hall. It is budget night tonight, which is why we have a crowd. Thank you all for being part of our budget process and for being available and very helpful as we work through the budget for 2026. So we're going to go right to the roll call and check in who is here. A simple here or yes if you're here, or silent if you're not. Ms. Butler?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Lally?
Here.
Mr. Lawler? Mr. Malaguti?
Here.
Ms. O'Connor?
Here.
Mr. Pizarro?
Here.
Ms. Richards?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Tompkins?
Here.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yeah, here.
Okay, he's over there. Thank you. We have a full house. It's unanimous. We're here. All right. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format. As you can see, some of us are here. A couple of our members are on the Zoom call, along with a number of the department heads and the public. This meeting will be airing on Comcast 9, Verizon 47, or on PAC TV's YouTube channel, which can be viewed at pactv.org/stream. The ground rules here at our committee is any speaker giving public comment is allotted up to 5 minutes in which to speak. You may make a comment at the beginning of the meeting, at the end, or if there's an issue that you want to weigh in on, you may have your public comment then. Anybody who wishes to attend this meeting virtually, including members of the public, can join through Zoom. Use your Zoom app. Our meeting code is 995-2986-0638, and our meeting passcode is 100131. And if you don't have access to Zoom and you want to call in, you may do so. We'll only hear your voice. We will not see you. The dial-in number is 929-205-6099. Same meeting ID, 995-2986-0638. And the meeting passcode is 100131. The views of the members of this committee are their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect the views of the majority of this committee. Having said that, is there anybody who would like to start us off with a public comment? Okay, please approach and your name and your address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dale Weber. I'm from Precinct 3. I just wanted to draw your attention as you go through this budget tonight that in the subcommittee reports, especially Subcommittee Report E under the library, I wanted to make a comment as there's a sentence there that's very misleading, and it's under the department synopsis, and I'll just read you that one sentence that I want to try to clarify. It basically says that the division is led by Maureen Coleman, acting library director, in conjunction with the assistant library director and financial input by the accounts manager with oversight by Michelle Brady. The reader would read that to say that the acting director is assisted by the assistant library director, when in fact, the assistant library director is the acting director. So there is no library director that's been appointed to fill a vacancy that's been open now for a little over 5 months. And that does create a workload issue to the employees on the front-facing positions where they have to assist whenever the acting library director is out of work for the various reasons that people are out of work. So I just wanted to clarify that that statement may need to be tuned up a little bit as you work your way through to town meeting, but there is no assistant library director that can assist the acting library director. So I just wanted to clarify that. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Weber, for that clarification. We'll note that in the record. Okay, so we are going to approve the minutes of the January 22nd meeting. And Mr. Lally, could I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And Mr. Malaguti, would you please second that motion?
Second.
We have a first from Mr. Lally, a second from Mr. Malaguti to approve the minutes as they are, January 22nd, 2025. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we will take a vote. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on the minutes?
I approve.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally? Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell.
Abstain.
Okay, so we have 12 voting in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention. Okay, so I have invited a guest to address our meeting. He is the newly installed chair of the school board, Luis Pisano. This question came up on our committee back weeks ago about what does the school board do? And I think we have the perfect person to answer that question.
Sorry. I can start over. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak. As Chairman Neerman said, I'm Luis Pisano, about a month in to my role as school board with Ms. Badger moving on to higher ways of serving the Plymouth community. So appreciate the opportunity to come educate the community a little bit about what the school board does. So I'll give you the official answer, and I'll give you my personal perspective as well. So officially, the school board has 3 distinct legal responsibilities. One is to oversee the development and basically spending of the annual budget. So we work with administration to develop it, and then obviously, to ensure accountability for spending against that approved budget. Secondly, we directly oversee the superintendent. So hiring, evaluation, if we were ever needed to hire another one, very similar to the select board's relationship with the town manager. And thirdly, we oversee all the district's policies. So developing new policies, revising existing policies. For instance, all of the school handbooks are reviewed and revised, each year for updates. For instance, a good example is there's lots of updates we have to make just to keep up with the times. There was a time when we wouldn't have had to have policies regarding cell phones or AI. So, as times change, our policies change. So those are the 3 official responsibilities. What I'd say in general is the school board's responsibility to ensure that every, school-age child in Plymouth has equal opportunity and equal access to, quality education. That means some students are much more expensive to educate, and the number of students that require some sort of special service has increased over the years and continues to increase. The school committee is blind to that. Our goal is to ensure that every student, regardless of their background, needs, abilities, has that equal access. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Do we have any questions since we all invited Mr. Pisano here? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, and good luck in your tenure. I hope it's long and successful.
All right. I appreciate your future support on our school budget.
Okay. All right, let's get down to our agenda items. Budget hearing, annual town meeting articles. We are going to be addressing subcommittees' reports A through F and G. And starting with A, we will bring the chair of that subcommittee up to the dais. Go. Yeah. It was like, what's my line? I was waiting for somebody to stand up or whatever that show used to be.
Good evening.
Truth or dare.
The first department we will review is that of Town Manager, Derek Brindisi. The proposed total spending Are you putting it up? I'm supposed to do it, sorry.
That's all right.
I didn't break it, I didn't touch it.
No?
Is it on?
It's on.
Good thing I didn't touch it.
Did you just,
There we go.
okay.
You want me to do it for you, Gail?
Sure, just stand there and do it.
Maybe we can get it bigger?
Yeah, no one's going to be able to read that. It doesn't go any bigger? No. Okay. The proposed total spending for this department is $1,465,190 for fiscal year '26. The overall budget of this department is down $5,000 year to year. The transfer of the administrative assistant in charge of licensing to inspectional services is largely offset by vacation buybacks of $14,500, added support for the celebrations of $10,000, and the quarterly On the Move magazine for $8,000. The subcommittee recommends the town meeting accept the select board's recommended budget. Any questions? Okay. Next, 1749 Courthouse. The fiscal year '26 plan is spending for the courthouse, the planned spending for the courthouse is slightly up from fiscal year '25 due to a wage increase. Otherwise, spending is flat year to year. The subcommittee recommends town meeting accept the select board's budget as requested. Any questions? This is easy. Okay, next is Human Resources, which is directed by Jackie Gurney. Overall, the Human Resources budget is increasing by 4% year to year. The small spending increase of $20,000 comes in support of technical services, emphasis on professional development causing increased meetings, educational and training costs, medical services, and heightened employee recognition. The subcommittee recommends town meeting accept the select board's budget as requested. Any questions? Next is town clerk. Kelly A. McElrath is the town clerk. For fiscal year '26, the total spending request for the town clerk shows an increase of $37,119, and as of this amount, $17,137 comes as a result of step and COLA increases for union employees. The balance of the increase relates to the increased postage for mail-in voting. The subcommittee recommends town meeting accept the select board's budget as requested. Any questions? Sorry.
Does the town clerk's budget reflect the select board's vote to change the number of polling locations down to 5? And will that change the budget number since we're, I think, saving $37,000 a year? I forget what the number was, 30-something thousand.
Would you like to answer that?
Thank you. Kelly McCoworth, the town clerk. This budget was prepared in November, so it does not reflect since the vote was taken in February. I believe what we're planning on doing is any of the funds that are left over in the budget will just fall to free cash for next year, and we would adjust the budget accordingly with the, for FY26, FY27.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Elections of town
Okay, so,
meeting.
we have a
I'm
question
sorry.
from Ms. Richards, please.
I'm sorry.
Actually, it's a question for the chair. Can we amend it to reflect that amount? Whatever that amount may be?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I would, can we have that amount that we're going to, of the savings for the minimizing the precincts?
So one thing I will point out is this is, the original question was based on the town clerk's budget. The budget that Ms. Butler was supposed to talk about next was elections and town meeting, so that's where the cut would be made.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next one, and I'll amend that. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Butler.
Okay. Elections and town meeting. Kelly A. McElrath also manages all town elections. The significant reduction in the departmental spending of $169,908 is a direct result in a reduction of town elections from 3 in fiscal year '25 to 1 in fiscal year '26. The major accounts affected are personnel services down $152,816 and purchased services down $24,700. The subcommittee recommends town meeting accept the select board's budget as requested. Any questions? Mr. Malaguti.
Thank you. Associated with the prior question for the elections, especially the departmental equipment, would we be looking at lesser cost for equipment purchases in the future by using up what we have from existing precincts that are consolidated, or would it be roughly about the same?
The technology would be the same because it's still 18 different precincts. What this notation was about the printer leased cost, what that was is in last year, town meeting supported me doing a lease that attributed to $5,500 a year. And because it was 95% of it, I was able to certify to the state, was for mail-in voting. They gave us 95% of that 5-year lease. So that $5,500 is not going to be expended over the next 4 years because we have the funds from the state to pay for that machine.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Ms. Richards?
Okay, back to my other question. What is the amount that we are saving on the election, on the precinct reduction?
So we are estimating it would be about $6,700 per election, and because FY '26 has one election in May of '26, $6,700 would be the estimate.
That's all we're saving and reducing.
So again, it's $6,700 per election as we move forward. Those are the estimates. I don't know that until I actually experience the costs and how each new polling location will operate. Whether or not, for example, whether or not the traffic at the polling locations, especially now that we're 5, I don't anticipate maybe needing an additional police officer dealing with traffic in the parking lot. So the major cost savings was the reduction in police officers.
Okay, so FY '26, we're talking one election?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I move that we amend and reduce the budget by $6,700.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Richards, a second by Mr. Malaguti to amend the budget. Do we have any discussion? Mr.
Do we wanna-
Malaguti?
Do we want to wait and do this when we're voting on all the budgets at the end of this? Or do we want to vote on it now?
I think we should vote on it now so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. Mr. Malaguti?
Thank you. I'm supportive of doing this, but for this round, I would say no for my vote, only because we just want to see how the expenses actually roll out for this cycle. I know we do have the decrease mentioned within the packet from last year of having 3 election cycles and this one having basically 1, so that decreased the cost right there. But to see how this plays out in case we need to have, as mentioned, an extra officer, or if we need to have other changes within the system that are unwarranted.
Okay, we have Mr. Green, and then we'll go to Ms. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just say I support this change. When we were discussing this budget, this had not happened yet, obviously. If it's more than $6,700, I'm happy to support a FinCom reserve transfer to cover any excess costs. So to me, I don't see any big risk with that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Green, Ms. Richards?
Mr. Green, thank you very much. You took the words out of my mouth.
Okay, we'll put it back in. Mr. Dunn?
I'm not a huge fan of reducing the number of locations. I think we should be making it easier for people to vote, not more difficult, even though the large percentage of people vote by mail. So the least we could do is save like $6,700, so I'll support this.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments and discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will vote on whether we will amend this budget by $6,700 was the figure? $6,700. Okay, Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
No.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell.
Yes.
So we have 12 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions, so the motion passes to amend the budget by $6,700. Okay, Ms. Butler,
Okay.
proceed, please.
Okay. Inspectional Services, Jason Silver is the Director of Inspectional Services. The increase in spending in fiscal year 26 relates primarily to an increase in personnel services of $130,814. A transfer in to the Department of the Administrative Assistant in charge of licensing accounts for much of the increase. Salary and wage increases for the staff account for the balance. The subcommittee recommends town meeting accept the Select Board's budget as requested. Any questions? Member benefits. The member benefits section includes programs that provide benefits and coverage for town employees. Programs include workers' compensation, deferred compensation match, employer Medicare 100B claims, 100F claims, the town wellness program, life insurance, Managed Blue, and Medicare Part B, premium and penalty. The total proposed increase for fiscal year 26 is $786,850. The prime contributor to the spending increase is Managed Blue premiums. These premiums support a supplemental insurance product for retirees age 65 plus. Expected costs of this plan for fiscal year 25 are considerably higher than the anticipated, resulting in a $383,000 catch-up to be borne in fiscal year 26. The normal plan premium increase of 12% for fiscal year 26 brings the total increase to $627,000. Any questions? Mr. Malaguti.
Thank you. Looking at this, for the penalty that we are levied, the 4% because of our lost record, is there knowledge of anything that's being done to help reduce that?
I'm not aware of any,
Sorry, so it states on top of the 11% adder for the normal premium expenses that there's also a 4% penalty because of the loss record. And I didn't know if there was anything that's being done to prevent that penalty in the future.
No, okay, if you could come up. Okay. So we have Lynn Barrett, Finance Director for the town.
So the loss ratio has to do with our workers' comp and our historical claims. So what we do to try to prevent that is we have a safety officer in-house, our OSHA officer. She continually does training with the staff, and we are constantly sending people for training and, recognize. We have quarterly risk management meetings with the staff and reiterate, things that we need to do to help mitigate risk. So continually working on that to try to decrease that
Okay, and
amount.
obviously, probably won't be able to 100% because of all logistics and everything, but it's being done to help, it's been reduced from past expenses and is still going down. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lally, the floor is yours.
Ms. Barrett or Mr. Brindisi, do you have a program that I will call Get Back to Work so you can get back to work? Do you require someone before they can return to their job to be 100% capable of doing that job, or do you have alternative positions they can work to get them back into the workforce and perhaps get them back to their position quicker?
So any individual who's injured on duty
Yes.
must return to work with a physician's note authorizing them to return to work. In some situations, we are allowed to bring folks back to work, like on light duty, so just an administrative role. So yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Brindisi. I see Mr. Snyder, you have your digital hand up. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find that this is, it's a little bit out of control, this budget. You've gone up $2 million in 2 years, been charged extra for premiums and stuff and levied losses. It's really not a good budget to look at here, because it's really out of control. And I know you said a few things that are being done, but to me, it's disturbing to see that kind of growth. It's unsustainable.
Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I guess I
Ms.
mean,
Barrett?
if you could clarify what you think is out of control. What was the increase that you're referring to?
Well, if you go the increase from 2024 actual of 7.5 million, you're now at 9.6 million 2 years later. That's unsustainable.
So our workers' comp premium is based on salaries, and in fiscal, so as salaries increase, the premium for our workers' comp policy increases. And we're always a year behind on, we get audited based on our previous year's payroll, and we receive a premium adjustment. The actual cost of our workers' comp has not gone up $2 million. There's several items within this budget in addition to workers' comp. There's employer Medicare match, which is also based on salary increases. We have our Managed Blue senior health insurance for our retirees, and the premium for that this past January went up to almost 12%, and that was really beyond our control. That is what the premium from Blue Cross, because it is a premium-based program. So it's really a combination of things that are within that member benefits budget, and I don't believe that it's out of control.
Well, again, I didn't say it was the workers' compensation going up like that. And in fact, you say that over here it's a 10% budget increase planned to account for a growing payroll. Fine, it's a lot more than 10%. If you take 7.5 million and go to 9.6 million for a total budget in 2 years.
Would you like a comment or no? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Snyder. And we'll go back to Ms. Butler. You've gone through all of your,
Oh, one more.
oh, I'm sorry.
All town insurance.
Yep.
This budget covers all town property and liability coverages. The total planned budget is $2,659,024, which includes an increase of $236.155, which arises from an estimated 10% escalator. The town takes advantage of the power of the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association, MIIA, which many municipalities in Massachusetts utilize to negotiate for best pricing. Plymouth also receives other discounts via training sessions participated in periodically. The subcommittee recommends town meeting accept the select board's budget as requested. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Dunn, the floor is yours.
I have one that's unrelated to this specific one, but it kind of applies to the overall first subcommittee A and the rest. OPIU does not have a contract yet. Do we think that the money in this budget is adequate if you guys do settle a contract to pay for whatever increases might occur?
Yeah, so that particular budget is not in Subcommittee A, it's in Subcommittee B's budget, and it's in salary reserve.
So it's not in any of these sections, it's in
It's
reserve?
not in it's not in Subcommittee A.
I mean, there are OPIU members that work under Subcommittee A, So I think it applies to the whole budget, is what I'm saying, and that's why I'm asking this.
Okay, so what's in the budget is the current salaries table that they are all being paid off of, which is the salary table from fiscal '24. That's what's budgeted in each and every individual department. And then in the salary reserve budget, which is under Subcommittee B, we have an adjustment there for fiscal '25 and an adjustment for fiscal '26, potential adjustment.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on Subcommittee A? All right. So we will take a vote. I need a motion. Mr. Dunn, would you like to move to approve Subcommittee A with the amended language?
So moved.
Thank you. And Ms. Richards, would you please second that motion?
Second that motion?
Thank you. I have a first from Mr. Dunn, a second from Ms. Richards. Is there any discussion, further discussion on any of the items in Subcommittee A? Okay. Then we will take the roll. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on Subcommittee A?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Bizzarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
And it's unanimous, 13 for, 0 against, 0 abstain. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Subcommittee A, and I will give credit to Ms. Butler to chair that committee, which included Mr. Green, Ms. Tompkins, and myself. Okay. That's okay, that's why I'm here. All right, and we're up for Subcommittee B, Chair Dan Green. The presentation is yours. Working on that committee with Mr. Green was Ms. Butler, Mr. Howard, Ms. Richards, and Mr. Snyder.
Hello, everyone. We have a lot of lines in this budget, so apologies in advance. So as Mr. Neerman said, myself, Gail Butler, Bruce Howard, Christine Richards, and Mark Snyder are on this. Subcommittee B, these are all our line items. So I try to coordinate with the budget binder, so if you go to Section 7, you can follow along the detailed line items, but I have the gist of it in this presentation. So the first budget is assessing. The subcommittee recommends to approve the Select Board's budget without any changes. The changes year over year, the prior director of assessing retired, a new director was hired, the lower overall compensation due to tenure. We discussed some opportunities to potentially reduce fees paid during this that Ms. Richards was exploring with the town, but overall no changes to line items. Any questions? Next budget is finance and accounting. So there's a 14% increase, and this is primarily driven by a new initiative, which is the eventual succession plan for Lynn Barrett. This is a new role with an incremental salary of approximately $125,000 plus additional costs and benefits. Other changes in the budget year over year are $9,000 for the biannual OPEB valuation, which will come up later. $6,000 approximately for trainings, including new staff member that I mentioned above, and $7,000 for grant writing software. Overall, we recommend approval of the Select Board budget without any changes. Questions on this one? Okay. Next up is procurement. This is the only budget where we have line item changes recommended. This budget, as presented without adjustments, is up 1.4%. In our discussions, we found two potential opportunities here to take a little bit of money back. The first was to reduce the repair and maintenance line item that you'll see by $5,000 to $10,000 total. We talked to the Director of Procurement about actual results in FY '24, which are about $9,000. And 25 actuals to date were zero. That's not totally representative of what the expected spend is, but we talked about what the needs were going to be in this budget in FY '26, and we felt that the $10,000 would be perfectly reasonable amount. The next piece here that we had another potential cut for was the advertising line item, reducing it by $10,000 to $20,000 total. The group is not expected to spend more than $15,000 in FY '25. We thought that the $20,000 revised amount was sufficient to cover the expected expenditures here. So the total reduction in our revised budget is $15,000 off the select board budget, and that's the $432,404 in this slide above. And the total change here is minus 2% instead of increase 1.4. Questions? Brian?
Since he's here, I'd like to ask Mr. Canty if the select board thinks that this will be enough money to do what is required.
Thank you, Mr. Dunton. So we approved a budget here based on what we think could be required here. I will remind folks that the difference here, the discrepancy between what the A&F subcommittee is proposing, what the select board is proposing, is really minuscule in a budget of this size, and that money that is not used in this flows into free cash, which is then used for next year's capital items. So it's not as if taking this money away now means it's saved from the taxpayers for forever, because next year we're going to need capital items that if this money isn't used, instead of being able to, depending on our capital needs, instead of being able to use free cash that was already paid for this year, we might have to raise and appropriate for some of those items. So the select board's view would be that the budget as presented is adequate to meet the needs of this particular department and division this year, and that there would be a plan to responsibly use that money next year if it is not used here. We would not recommend revising the budget as presented. Available for any follow-ups.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Candy.
Any other questions on this? Again, the position of our committee was that the allotted funds were sufficient, and there's plenty of other sources of free cash in this budget. So, next budget is Treasury and Collections. Slight increase due to step up for union employees, about $6,000. Other expenses increase due to higher fees for payment services. So, bill pay through the town, credit card processing, et cetera, is falling through this line item, and it is going up year over year. These fees are not allocated to other departments, so it resides in Treasury and Collections. Overall, recommend approval of the Select Board's budget for this line item. Questions? Okay, next one is IT. It's in Section 6 if you want to follow along. All right, so IT is up 8.6% year over year, or sorry, 8.9. Overall, we recommend approval of the Select Board budget. We had significant discussion specifically related to how the town is approaching cybersecurity, as that's a very pertinent issue. We discussed some potential worst-case scenarios that could happen if there was a malicious attack on the town. Some other towns in Massachusetts are experiencing that. So we certainly felt that the requested budget line items that address that were absolutely critical to the town's infrastructure. There is a $101,000 increase for salaries. This is a new initiative to hire a business administrator who will be responsible for asset management, clerical, also help desk support, and it's driven by just the growth of the department needs overall. There's a $112,000 increase overall in other expenses. There's some offsetting charges, so you see some big swings between telephone and another line item, but it's all kind of the same bucket of changing over services from telephone traditional to VIOP, online phone system. And there's a pretty decent fluctuation in repair and maintenance costs driven by just vendor price increases that are being passed on. There's a $54,000 increase for department equipment, which is to replace 90 devices, laptops, et cetera, at approximately $1,300 per unit. Overall, we were comfortable with the increase and felt that the line items that were presented were appropriate. Questions on IT? Okay, next up is the fun stuff, fixed costs. First line item is tax title foreclosure. So if you were looking at your emails from Jeanette today, you'll see a lengthy list of properties that relate directly to this line item. Is a level funded budget year over year. So you see no increase here, but the 25 amount is significantly higher than 24 actuals. And that is because of incremental legal costs related to Supreme Court ruling Tyler v. Hennepin County, related to tax title takings. And then there's subsequent changes to Massachusetts law that address this Supreme Court ruling. So overall, this department is going to experience an increase in expenses due to complying with the aspects of this law. Overall, we recommend approval of the Select Board budget. Questions? Okay. Next up is salary reserve fund. So, Mr. Dunn, this is what you were talking about with the supervisory contract money set aside. The decrease year over year is just different set-asides for different purposes. So we're comfortable with the amount presented and recommend approval of the Select Board budget. Questions? Next up is FinCom Reserve Fund. I don't believe we actually used this at all last year, but the purpose of this fund is to allocate funds to extraordinary expenses or line items such as the town elections budget is over and we need to add more funds to it. It's a level funded budget and $150,000. We recommend approval of the Select Board budget. Mr. Malaguti.
Historically, what has been the average used out of the FinCom Reserve Fund over, say, a 10-year period on average?
Don't have the answer to that, but maybe Ms. Barrett will. I know last year it was 0.
Would you, Mr. Canty, would you like to weigh in on that answer, since you might have a little bit of experience with that? Oh, Lynn, I'm sorry. She beat you to it.
So, sorry about that. So what we usually do is, if there is a reserve fund transfer during the year, they have been fairly minimal. And some that we've done in the past, we've done primarily end-of-year transfers, because sometimes things happen within the last 2 months of the year. So we don't necessarily hit the reserve fund for it. We hit another budget or within the same budget from salaries to expense. If we don't use all of the 150 in a particular year, what we've done in the past, if we had a snow and ice deficit, we've asked the A&F to approve transferring the balance that's remaining into a snow and ice deficit. But there again, we haven't had a snow and ice deficit in the last few years, and we pray this year that we're not going to have one with all the snow that's been happening. But I don't have the 10-year average memorized in my head, but it's been fairly minimal.
Okay, thanks. Because my question for that was basically, I know that within this subcommittee and other talks that we've been looking at, actual spends and projected expenditures, I didn't know if it was just put in as a safety mark of 150,000, or if it could have changed and gone to like 100,000 or something like that. That's why I just asked that question. Thank you.
Mr. Canty, would you like to weigh in on this?
I would love to, thank you. So this is really the unanticipated expense fund. So if you have a town this big with this many things going on, the idea that we would have a $325 million budget and an unanticipated expense would only be about 150, that's pretty lean already, $150,000. And there have been years where we've used all of it. There have been years where we've used little to none of it. But I would point out things like, say you have what the NIP ban election was back in calendar year 2024. That was an unanticipated expense, and it cost like $40,000. Now, luckily, it'll cost a little bit less now, and we're all happy for that. But it's still an unanticipated, well, you're going to come around. But it's an unanticipated expense. There's snow and ice. You never know how much it's going to snow. You can deficit spend snow and ice as long as you don't reduce it, but you don't want to put too much into it because that's silly to put millions and millions and then you only spend a couple $100,000. There have been other things. There's been, there could be a natural disaster that you need it. And if you don't have enough money in this, I would point out, if you ran out of money in other places, the only way to raise and appropriate more money would be to call a town meeting, which then costs in and of itself about $25,000 to $40,000 to do. So, it's probably better I would say, because of the way things are going cost-wise, you might in future years see this 150 increasing to accommodate for supplies and materials and other things that keep going up over time, not going down, sadly. But we haven't had to increase it, but I don't think reducing it would be in the town's best interest because it is sort of the rainy day fund for an extremely large, extremely complex community.
Thank you, Mr. Canty.
Any other questions?
Mr. Lally, the floor is yours.
Would this be an appropriate source of funds for the construction audit that this committee wanted to have for Oak Street? And if not, why not?
Anybody want to answer that?
So a request to transfer funds from it requires the select board to sign off on it, no? Is that just a reserve transfer request at the end of the year? So I guess you could make a request to that, but you can't actually expend the money without the executive, regardless. So you're welcome to try.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that means no.
All right. Any other questions? Pension contributions, my favorite. So we have an 8.2% increase this year. It will be an 8.2 increase next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. I'm not sure what year I'm on yet, but this reflects the employer cost of pension contributions. So we'll increase 8.2% every year until 2035 in order to reduce the unfunded liability to zero by 2036. It's a state statute. It's also sound practice. Right now, the unfunded pension liability is, as of 1/1/24, is $186.8 million. Ultimately, we recommend approval of the select board budget, but it's very small now, I realize. In your packet, you'll see the pension contribution schedule from 2025 to 2040. I suggest everybody take some time to take a look at this at some point. The current year contribution is $22 million, as you see on the previous slide. In 2035, the expected contribution is $44.4 million. It's a 2 times increase on what we're paying now. And if we took that and measured up against the current budget, it's 15% of the whole budget. And then the next year, the contribution is 7. So what do you do with that capacity? Just a rhetorical question. So any questions on pension?
Back to you.
Thank you. Next up is unemployment trust. So the town does not do private unemployment insurance like a private business. They pay claims out of the trust fund. It's a level funded budget. We recommend approval of the select board budget here. $60,000. Okay. Member insurance, the decrease year over year is due to changes in plan structure based on the prior year PEC agreement. Hopefully I got that right in the notes. It's offset by some increase in Medicare Part D premiums due to provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act. Ultimately, we recommend approval of the select board budget and commend the town for saving money by restructuring the plans. Questions? Next up is OPEB Trust. This is similar in air quotes to pension. OPEB is a pay-as-you-go plan versus contribute based on the schedule. The budget is based on a minimum of 1% of covered payroll. Currently, the town's unfunded OPEB liability is $576 million. It is the fourth largest in the Commonwealth behind Boston, Springfield, Worcester as of 2021 state report. We recommend approval of the select board budget, but certainly something to have in the back of your mind. Questions? Compensated absences is a level funded budget, and it is accrued vacations, sick buyout for any employees that leave service during the year. Overall, we recommend approval of the select board budget. Questions? Okay. Last up, community debt. It is a level funded budget. If you go through the line items, there'll be movement between principal, interest, short-term borrowings. Overall, it's a level funded budget. It's based on structured interest and principal payments on the town's debt portfolio, including short-term borrowings, bonds, and it's mainly based on a payment schedule with the exception of short-term borrowing amounts. Overall, recommend approval of the select board budget. Not really much you can do with this one. Questions? That's it.
Ms. Richards, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I just have just a small clarification on the assessor's budget.
Almost there.
Thank you. So when we were discussing the reduction in the fees paid, so those are not county and state recordings. So just for clarification, the assessor's office does not record anything at the Registry of Deeds. Those are for copies. They download copies of deeds so that they can upload update their database on new homeowners. Or they receive copies of them, paper copies that we send to the town. There is and I've spoken to the new director of assessing, and he was very nice and accommodating, and we discussed ways that that department can download the documents free and import them into the Patriot Properties program for no cost. So that would be a savings of about $2,700. So yes, drop in the bucket, but every drop in the bucket fills it up. So we want to cut out these, little drops that are unnecessary. And that is an unnecessary function, and we don't want to kill a bunch of trees anymore. So I just wanted to clarify what that was, and they're not county or state recordings. But thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Any other comments? Ms. Tompkins, could I get a motion to approve Subcommittee B? I'm looking for, help me out, Mr. Green. There was a different budget for
That was procurement.
procurement. Okay, so we are actually voting on your subcommittee's recommendation.
Yeah, that was baked into the recommendation.
Okay, just want to clear that up for the record. Okay, Ms. Tompkins,
So moved.
thank you so much. And Ms. O'Connor, would you like to second that motion?
Seconded.
Excellent. We have a first from Ms. Tompkins and a second from Ms. O'Connor. Do we have further discussion about voting on Subcommittee B? Hearing and seeing none, we will go to the vote. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally? Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
And we have 13 voting for, 0 against, 0 abstentions. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve the budget as we amended. And thank you, Mr. Green and company. Okay, next up is Subcommittee C, Chairperson Christine Richards.
Good evening, everybody. I am Chair of the Subcommittee C, and I was joined by my committee members, Brian Dunn, Bruce Howard, Joseph Lally, and Lorenzo Pizarro, and I would like to thank them for all of their help and contributions. In addition, I'd like to thank the department heads whose help was just enormous, and that would be Police Chief Flynn, Harbor Master Chad Hunter, Fire Chief Foley, Emergency Management Director Christian Horvath, Energy and Environmental Director David Gould. Thank you, gentlemen. So I'm going to start with the police department tonight. The proposed budget, personnel services, $15,710,764, with other expenses, $911,548. Departmental equipment, $820,090, for a total of budget $17,442,402. Sorry. And this, sorry. Get that. The budget observations. The police budget shows an increase in salaries related to recently agreed upon contracts with department personnel. Proposed increases for the police department's other expenses reflect known and expected increases in subscriptions, memberships, and repair and maintenance, and other similar items. Recently upgraded policy management, internal affairs, and training management software are included in the increase. An increase in training and ammunition reflects the added training requirements due to post and MPTC collaboration changes in the current political and cultural environments, and to the expanded annual firearms training to biannual to enhance proficiency and reduce liability. A significant other expenses increases associated with the addition of body-worn cameras to sworn personnel. Another proposed increase related to departmental equipment due to the projected vehicle replacement cost that returns 2 vehicles removed from replacement in FY25. So initiatives in response to the organizational study completed earlier this year, Chief seeks to act upon some of the recommendations and reorganize his command and mid-level supervisory staff, including adding a deputy chief already approved and adding a lieutenant and sergeant to the staffing. The lieutenant will handle all professional standards, operations, including internal affairs. The subcommittee recommended approving the police department budget as recommended by the select board by a vote of 5-0. Are there any questions?
Mr. Howard, actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Snyder, you had your hand up first, and then I'll go to Mr. Howard and somebody else on the right flank here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
It's all yours, Mr.
Through-
Snyder.
Through you to the police chief, or whoever is representing the police department. What were the other expenses, and what were the bargained gains for the union agreeing to wear the cameras?
I'm sorry, sir, I have a hard time hearing your question.
Okay? Wanted to know what the other expenses involved, and also what gains the union got in bargaining to wear the cameras.
So when you talk about other expenses, those are the operational costs of the department, including buying equipment, supplies, training expenses, and the like. That's what the other expenses are. And again, I'm having a hard time regarding your question regarding the negotiations.
Yeah, my question was,
What were they paid to wear the cameras?
What did the union get for allowing that to be done?
What they actually gained by be given the cameras was an extra personal day.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Snyder. We're going to Mr. Howard. The floor is yours.
Chief, good evening. I'm sorry, I might have missed your response to the previous question. Did you address the body cameras?
Sure. What did the unions gain? Or what did?
No, I think my concern was the recent article in The Independent, which said that the union may be looking for additional pay in order to have the...
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
What the unions received for the body cams was negotiated in the contracts that took effect in July. The overall gain, what the unions received, was an added personal day.
Thank you.
A personal day.
Okay,
so what is being reported in the Plymouth Independent.
So this will not impact the budget?
Nope.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions for the chief?
If I could just make
Yes,
one statement.
this is Derek
Just
Brandisi, Town Manager.
Sorry, good evening, Derek Brandisi, Town Manager. Just so it's clear, in the public sector, when there's a change in working conditions, that is something that must be bargained. And so the fact that we, the chief and I and the select board wanted body cameras, we had to approach the unions and we had to impact bargain that change in working conditions, which is why they received the compensation in return of a personal day off. So I just wanted to be clear that, we can't force this upon them. We have to bargain a change in working conditions.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Mr. Snyder, your hand is up. Is it still up from before, or do you have a new question? Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Richards, proceed.
Thank you. So our next up is Harbor Master. So the Harbor Master Division budget increase for FY26 is $31,613. This increase includes a minimal increase in wages due to OPEIU and SEIU contractual obligations, only one increase in operational expenses for mooring software as a new initiative to address 2 select board goals, and an increase in department equipment, $14,000, to replace police radios that cannot be retrofitted to the new digital police frequency. The proposed budget is $545,868 for personnel services, $73,100 for other expenses, $25,000 for departmental equipment, $30,000 for fuel and utilities, for a total of $673,968. The subcommittee recommends approving the Harbor Master Department budget as recommended by the Select Board by a vote of 5-0. Are there any questions? Mr. Malaguti?
Thank you. When this was being talked about for the mooring software, was there the talk of how much the savings would be from the mailings, and also what is the incremental cost year over year for the maintenance of the software?
That's a great question. Chad Hunter, Harbor Master. So we'll mail, savings-wise for mailings. I think we put out about 1,500 bills. So postage, I think, is 69 cents at this point, plus envelopes, time. So I don't know the math, but I'm sure we could figure it out. So there's some savings there, but we're really looking to reduce the amount of paper that we're putting out. Somebody mentioned saving the trees earlier. So the idea would be to try and do a lot more electronic billing. So people will get their invoice in their email and just pay it directly through the online portal. So definitely a more user-friendly component to this. We also want to help with reporting, so allowing our mooring holders to upload documents, whether that's insurance paperwork and things that we aren't able to do at this moment. So it's really a user-friendly approach. There's some savings in postage, there's some savings in personnel time, but really trying to make it more user-friendly.
Thank you. And the other part, what's roughly the year-to-year maintenance cost for the software?
So no maintenance cost. It's kind of a user agreement. So this $10,000 that's in the budget, that would be a reoccurring cost. We would keep it in the budget moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Are there any other questions? Okay, so moving right along. So we have the fire department up next with Chief Foley. The proposed 2026 budget, personnel services, $16,885,369. Other expenses are $582,025. Departmental expenses, $385,184, for a total of $17,852,578. The fire department has two revolving accounts, the fire alarm revolving account and the fire prevention revolving account. Both accounts fund percentages of salaries and benefits and offset the cost of capital expenses. The department's new initiative fund request of $60,003 is to hire an assistant to the fire alarm superintendent. This division was staffed with 2 employees until budget cuts were made in 1992. The town's growth has resulted in expansion of the municipal fire alarm system. Additionally, we've grown from 1 radio system to 6 radio systems. The repair and maintenance of radio equipment, fire alarm systems, cables, the short arm agent program have made a necessary position to ensure we meet the succession planning goals of the Select Board. The subcommittee recommends approving the fire department budget as recommended by the Select Board by a vote of 5-0. Do I have any questions? Okay, next we have emergency management. Proposed 2026 budget, $67,045. Other expenses, $1,391,020. Departmental equipment is $7,000, for a total of $1,465,065. Over the last few budgets, the salary of the Emergency Management Director has been increasing incrementally, moving from what was a 100% grant-funded position. Currently, the salary of the EMD is split 60-40. The increase also includes a specialty stipend for the handling of the department's Comfort Dog Wellness Program. 3.35% of the increase is due to the responsibility of managing the annual cost of the combined police, fire, and emergency medical dispatch services as agreed upon in the transition to the Plymouth Emergency Communication Center. The subcommittee recommends approving the subcommittee recommends approving the emergency management budget as recommended by the Select Board in a 5-0 vote. Any questions? I think, last but not least, energy and environment, Mr. Gould. The proposed 2026 budget, $781,317. Other expenses were $131,200. Departmental equipment is $20,000 for a total of $932,517. This budget provides for adequate staffing to meet multiple Select Board goals, including the development of a community wildfire protection plan, expansion of the electric vehicle charging network, work on the dredging of Jenny Pond, the Downtown Resiliency Project, and the Town Wharf Way Improvement Project. The subcommittee recommends approving the Energy and Environment budget as recommended by the Select Board by a vote of 5-0.
Mr. Green.
I'm sorry, I have to ask this question, and it's super in the weeds. In the fire department budget, there's a line item that is just 3 question marks for $210. It's $200, but can we like put a description there when this goes to town meeting? Is that possible? Happy to bring it up. It's on page 49 of 157 in the binder. I'm sorry.
49. Budget.
That's a great question. Neil Foley, Fire Chief. I'll have to get back to you on that. That might have just been a typo from before during when everything was brought over. It's a pretty extensive budget line item list, so I can get back to you with that. But
you don't even need to get back to me if we can just change it to like miscellaneous or something. I think
yeah,
it'd just be cleaner.
I believe that it was just funding for some type of training.
Okay, thank you.
Did you mark it? Thank you, Mr. Green, for that in-depth question. Thank you, everybody, for your listening.
Okay, let's see. Ms. Butler, how would you like to make a motion to approve Subcommittee C?
So moved.
And Mr. Lawler, would you please second that motion?
Second.
Okay, so we have a first from Ms. Butler, a second from Mr. Lawler to approve Subcommittee C. Do we have any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, let's go to the vote. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on Subcommittee C?
Yes.
And Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
For $200. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Ms. Trudell? Mr.
Yes.
Trudell? 13 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting pass Subcommittee C. Unanimous vote. Which brings up Subcommittee D. Joe Lally, Chair. Take it away.
Good evening. I was joined this year by Everett Malaguti, Lorenzo Pizarro, and David Trudell. And before we jump into it, I just want to spend a little bit on this summary page to highlight a couple of trends. First of all, 61% of the approximately $13 million operational budget is driven by personnel expenses, and that'll be key here for a couple of points I want to make. If you add in snow and ice, that brings the total budget to about just under $14.3 million. That's being proposed by the Select Board. If you look down the column, you'll see that the overall increase is 0.8%. There were contractual increases to each of the departments this year, but there was also a 15% budget reduction for vacant positions. This department is got a lot of positions in it and has, at least the last few years that I've been involved, having to endure a lot of vacancies. They've been unable to fill positions. So that's the magic behind why we're seeing an overall budget increase of just 0.8%. So moving on to engineering, again, a large percentage of that budget, almost 90% of that budget is personnel expenses and other expenses. So they're proposing a 0.9% increase given the long-standing vacancies they've had for their budget for FY26. Any questions on engineering? All right, next one is highway, same theme. They have no proposed departmental equipment expenses for FY26, so they are just actually going to go down by 1.3%. And again, that's possible by the large number of vacancies in that department. The other expenses does include the every other year expense for crushing of C&D debris to be distributed on the roads. Any questions on highway? Okay. Administration, 96% of that's just personnel expenses. Overall increased by 4.7%. No vacancies there either, contractual increases. Building maintenance, one exception here. Fuel and utilities is a large part of this budget. And again, an increase of 1.8% overall, but a 7.3% increase due to anticipated continuing rising costs for energy expenses. Any questions on building maintenance? Okay, fleet maintenance. They have a mixture of fuel and utilities as being a big chunk of their expense. 22% is personnel. So reduction in personnel expenses is again 1.2%, driven by the 15% budget reduction for vacancies, since it will be rather difficult to fill all of those in the coming budget year. And again, increases. Well, that's it, actually. Any questions on fleet maintenance? Okay, solid waste operations. This does not include the Manomet Transfer Station enterprise operation, and this is contractual increases related to the contracts with monitoring the landfill and with their waste to energy conversion. Any questions on solid waste? Right, the crematory, again, 82% driven by personnel expenses. And the decrease in expenses this year is driven in part by the recent appointment of a new superintendent at a lower salary grade, is one of the major drivers in the personnel expense reduction there. And then just a modest increase in other expenses. Questions on crematory? And for cemetery, same thing, the superintendent split between the two departments, and a budget reduction of 1.3%. There is an increase of 100% for departmental equipment, given the anticipated needs for the coming year. Right, park and forestry, 0.5% increase. Again, 83% is driven by personnel expenses, and they maintain 35 areas of parks, beaches, and sports complexes. And last but not least, snow and ice, flat funded for the coming year. Fixed cost item. So the Subcommittee D recommends approval of all of these budgets unanimously for those that were in attendance. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lally. And let's see, Mr. Pizarro, would you like to make a motion to approve Subcommittee D, Public Works?
So moved.
And your next door neighbor up there, Mr. Snyder, would you be so kind as to second that motion to approve our Subcommittee D?
I will second that motion.
Thank you so much. We have a first from Mr. Pizarro, a second from Mr. Snyder. Is there any discussion on Subcommittee D, Public Works? Hearing and seeing none, we will vote on the budget as presented by Mr. Lally. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on Subcommittee D?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro, sorry.
Yes.
All right, now it's your turn, Ms. Richards.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell.
Yes.
So 13 vote in favor, 0 against, 0 abstain. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends unanimously that town meeting approve Subcommittee D as presented today. Thank you very much, Mr. Lally, and your committee. I will turn it over now to Subcommittee E, Chair Bruce Howard.
Good evening. Subcommittee E was hearing budgets from Planning and Development, Health and Human Services. Subcommittee members, myself, Molly O'Connor, Lorenzo Pisano, Mark Schneider, Emily Tompkins, and David Trudell. I want to thank Mr. Hartman and Ms. Brady and their staffs for their assistance in developing these budget presentations and during our budget discussions. So we're going to dive right into it. So as you've heard with many of the budgets, the divisional budgets this evening, personnel services have increased due to contractual obligations. For community planning, that was the case here, as well as increases in other expenses, including a $5,000 increase in consulting services to fund outside consultants to assist in various boards and committees. A $4,500 increase in technical services to support the Open Space Committee, of which I'm a member, and then a $4,000 increase for expanded staff education and training. Should be noted that planning is leading an 18-month effort to develop a master plan for the 1,600-acre Pilgrim property. And not shown on this slide, but during fiscal 2026, planning will also support the master plan process, which will focus on drafting recommendations and actions. And the subcommittee unanimously approved the select board's budget. Any questions on community planning? Moving on. So the redevelopment, oh, I'm sorry, there was a question. Yes, Mr. Malaguti.
Thank you. In our budget binders page, if I'm looking at it correctly, 13 of 67 on the tab 10 for planning and development. The technical services increases by 5,000, and the meetings, education, training increases by 4,500. So there's a 500 difference between the report and the presentation for each of those. So I'm just wondering what those would be for.
I'm hoping that Mr. Hartman will bail me out here.
So it was said a 4,500 increase in technical services for open space committee, but the technical services increases by 5,000, not 4,500. And the increase 4,000 to provide expanded staff education and training, that one stated at 4,000 is actually 4,500 in a big budget binder. So each of those is 500 higher in our binder than in the presentation.
And you're saying, so, oh, this is lower?
These are higher than being presented on here.
So those are summaries. So those are just summaries. So we'd have to look at the whole line item. What he's given you in his presentation are just simply summaries of the major changes, not all the changes.
Okay, I just wanted clarity just because it was that and that, so I just wanted to make sure.
So the detail line item.
Okay, it's not a big issue. I just wanted clarity, that was all. Thank you.
So which one's higher?
So.
This is higher or that's higher?
This is higher than this.
Yeah, so it's probably something inside that's an additional increase.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Any other questions? Moving on. Redevelopment Authority, this is a 2% increase has been requested, and that was approved by the subcommittee. Questions? Animal control. So again, increases in salaries, but the substantial increase is in budgeting the overtime pay. So as you may recall, this division had previously been part of DE&E, and they were able to cover the overtime pay, but traditionally that had been underfunded. So under Ms. Keene's management, she's working with the division to minimize the overtime as much as possible. I had to explain this to my wife the other night, so it's fresh in my mind that the overtime is incurred here when calls come in over the weekend, and moving forward, those calls will be recorded by the dispatcher and then handled by animal control during operational hours whenever possible. The Animal Control Division has one revolving account that is for the animal shelter, and the current $5,000 authorization will be used for the care, health, and welfare of the animals. And this budget was approved by the subcommittee. Questions? Yes, sir.
I was just curious if there was any discussion on the bird flu response costs and if that was being incurred here or Department of Public Health. I know it's not cheap to go get 6 or 7 guys out in the lake cleaning up birds, so I don't know if that came up or it was before the discussion.
It did come up, but I believe it came up when we talked about public health.
Okay.
It's my understanding, Ms. Brady, do you want to, Ms. Keene is on.
Here.
Yes.
Hello.
Please,
Hello, everybody.
please go ahead, Karen.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Great question. The majority of the expenses so far to date having to do with avian flu here in Plymouth, a lot of that collection effort at the very beginning when we saw people go out onto Billington Sea was done through the state of Massachusetts. So different state agencies, actually 4 state agencies, worked together to retrieve those birds from the Billington Sea area. The state has come back 2 other times to collect large amounts of carcasses for certain areas and certain ponds. So currently, what's happening is our animal control team and also the public health office working together, taking the phone calls and distributing the addresses for the animal control officers to go and pick up the birds. So cost-wise, there has been no direct impact to anything that has been budgeted previously because the majority of the expenses, large collection efforts, have been made by the state of Massachusetts.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Moving on. Moving on to public health. So again, increases in the personnel services line due to contractual obligations, step increases, COLA as well. Let's see. Public Health will be maintaining their contracted vendor as a part-time food inspector. So in the original budget submitted to the Select Board, it was proposed to add a full-time inspector position to the budget. That was not included in the Select Board budget, so it is not reflected in the budget that was approved by the subcommittee. Let's see. Revenue increases represent the new short-term registration fee and increases in the number of permits issued. That was offset by revenue decreases from a lower number of septic system inspections. The town of Plymouth received, actually, it's more than Plymouth. It's 6 towns in the southern Plymouth County Collaborative received over $500,000 from Public Health Excellence Grant. And I think if you read down a little further, part of that grant will be used to fund, through the administrative fee, will be used to fund some of the salary differential from a new initiative to reclassify public health agent to the assistant director of public health. We talked a bit during the budget session about the public health division's communication around the fats, oils, and grease regulations and the impact on businesses in town. Ms. Key made it clear that these regulations are intended to protect residents, businesses, and the public from blockages of the town's sanitary system due to fats, oils, and grease. As you can imagine, pretty messy if that were to happen, so the division's to be commended on advancing this, and we encouraged further communication about this, on this topic. The budget was unanimously approved by the subcommittee. Questions? Center for Active Living. So here again is an increase due to salary increases and filling the vacant Director of Elder Affairs position. As you can see here, that vacancy is to be funded 40% from the Cal formula grant and 60% by the town budget. Should be noted that the state has increased the formula budget, raising it from $14 to $15 rate per senior. There is a decrease in personnel costs due to eligibility of earned time vacation and sick time, as well as sick time buyback. A major decrease in the budget was achieved by creating the revolving fund for the Cal Cafe. So there are two revolving accounts, one, the Cal Cafe Nutrition and Meals on Wheels Fund, which is authorized for $100,000, which covers the cafe supplies, salaries, staffing, and payments to Old Colony Elder Services for Meals on Wheels, passing through any donations that are received. And then there's also the Council on Aging Programs Fund, which is authorized for $120,000. Subcommittee recommends approval of this budget. Questions about Center for Active Living? Veteran Services showed an increase of just over $2,000 due to contract settlement. And for the costs that we'll talk about here, one of those costs is the increase for headstone and markers, $500, as many of these medallions get ruined by the weather, lawnmowers, and as well as an increase in cost per piece. The Veterans Remembrance is increased by $200, which includes increased costs for flags and wreaths, as well as renewal of one Vetrospect subscription, the software used. And this software is actually shared among the members here to minimize the cost to the town. There's a paragraph here on the HERO Act, which this committee has previously reviewed and approved. Subcommittee recommends approval of this budget. Questions? The library. So the library budget is an increase of 4.87%. That should be noted that in the budget package that we reviewed, there was some different numbers presented. So the increase that's stated here is based on the select board's recommended budget. So this increase is due to personnel expenses, the increased usage of books and periodicals. When the electronic collections are done on a pay-per-use model, so when the usage increases, the costs increase. Library supplies shows a modest increase to maintain the community garden. Dues and membership increase. This line item is the price is set by the Old Colony Library Network, which if you have used that service of the library is a really great resource for books and other media, which I personally take advantage of. Equipment repair and maintenance was reduced when the maintenance contracts for 2 copiers were moved to IT. There's a decrease in postage as they're transitioning from physical mailings to emails. The technical services supplies is a decrease resulting from incorporating vendor book processing. Let's see what else. Public supplies. 2 public printers have been moved to IT, and their supplies and toner have been deleted from the budget. The library budget also includes restoration of 1 of 3 page positions. This is a technical services page that is a 10-hour-a-week, non-union minimum wage position. Helps with restocking materials and removing obsolete materials. The library has 1 revolving account, which is the library lost materials, which is authorized for $15,000. Again, remember that these revolving accounts are limited in their, as their spending may not exceed receipts. So I think that the receipts for this revolving account were substantially less, but we didn't change the authorization. The subcommittee approves this divisional budget request. Yes, Mr. Dunn.
I just wanted to follow up on the comment made by Mr. Weber earlier and ask for clarification that there is not a separate acting library director and assistant library director, and ask what the holdup is in hiring someone else if if our services may be starting to suffer because of the lack of personnel.
Michelle, do you want to address that?
I'm more than happy to do so. Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for the question. I do apologize in reading the synopsis. Of course, I can understand why it would be potentially looked at that way. I think when we did department synopsis, it was an overview, and some of the language was used previously just to describe the overall functionings of the department. So that language was in there as kind of a general overview of understanding the hierarchy. It is absolutely true that Ms. Coleman is the acting library director and assumed that position, thankfully, when the library director left. We were honestly looking at potential changes in job description to the library director, looking at different avenues and areas in which maybe we could improve those job descriptions and duties and responsibilities. But ultimately, with the budget being as it is, we decided this was not the year to move forward with that. And so we have posted that position. That position interviews were recently conducted, and we are in process of hiring that library director.
Thank you. I just asked if we could, when this goes to town meeting, clarify that those aren't 2 separate positions right now.
Certainly.
We'll take a look at that wording if it, in fact, is to go to town meeting.
Thank you.
Other questions on the library? Okay. Recreation. So temporary and seasonal wages continue to represent the largest expense of the recreational budget, operational budget, accounting for nearly 70% of the total budget. The staff supports the 5 Plymouth beaches, but in this year's budget, the recreation Division is looking to eliminate lifeguard coverage at White Horse Beach in its entirety. There was also, in the original budget submitted to the Select Board, there was funding for a Kubota utility vehicle. The decision was made to award the ARPA funds to fund that vehicle. The town will also be funding the installation of metal detector equipment at Memorial Hall and for soccer goal equipment. Let's see, the Recreation Division includes 3 revolving funds. The Recreation Revolving Fund takes fees from registrations, events, and other revenue collected, and then uses that to cover the costs of the services provided, as well as 65% of the full-time staff salaries and benefits come out of this revolving fund. There is also a Memorial Hall revolving fund and the Hedges Pond revolving fund. The subcommittee recommends approval of this budget. Questions on recreation? Yes.
Yes, Bruce. Just curiosity, White Horse Beach, why did they eliminate the lifeguard there?
Is Ann on? I don't believe she is. Michelle, do you want to address that?
Of course, Ann is not on, but I'm happy to address that question. Thank you for that. So in looking at the data and looking at the financials, last year we made a decision to decrease, not utilize lifeguards at White Horse Beach Monday through Thursday, and we kept them Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In looking at the data and the reported incidents and the cost versus need in terms of what that looked like, the lifeguards were not utilized in any emergency type way. What we did do in place of that, though, is you'll see in the recreation budget, there is a reallocation of, I believe it's $6,468 for a beach supervisor position. So there will be a staff at White Horse Beach that will be overlooking and ensuring that things run smoothly, but it saves the town money in an operation whereby the lifeguards were just not cost effective based on the number of incidents that may have occurred at White Horse Beach.
So what you're saying is that because there were no incidents, we do not need a lifeguard at White Horse Beach?
No, and let me elaborate on that. Thank you. Besides incidents, the area that is safeguarded or lifeguarded under the Recreation Department, very few swimmers were utilizing that section in which the lifeguards were manning. So along with that, and having no incidents and seeing very small traffic in that specific area, it made more sense to have an overall beach supervisor that manned that section rather than employing multiple lifeguards.
Does the supervisor have lifeguard capability?
Yes.
Okay, so there'll be one lifeguard
Well,
for White
One
Horse
beach-
Beach?
one beach supervisor, not for all of White Horse Beach, just for the area that recreation is responsible for.
Michelle, let me add that it will be posted that there will be no lifeguards on duty.
Correct, and that is already in existence there because of the Monday through Thursday, no lifeguard staffing.
Thank you.
Ms. Butler?
It's only a 500-foot section, just so you know, it's a 500-foot section, no incidents. The lifeguards are not responsible for patrolling, enforcing bylaws, parking, et cetera, any of that. So just so you have the parameters of the section.
Where is the 500-foot section? Can you describe it at all?
Bear with me.
And
I
is the
think
town
Mr.
covered?
Canty said it's close to the water.
Close to the water, okay, that helps.
It's at the public access point.
Thank you, Mr.
By
Canty.
Hilltop.
There's one in every crowd. Does the town bear any responsibility if someone gets hurt? Where in the past, we have provided,
Not if it's posted that
Not
there are
if it's
no
posted.
lifeguards on duty.
okay,
And
Correct.
we had a lengthy discussion about that during the subcommittee.
okay. Is it,
I too had my concerns about it, but the incident rates were really low over the last few years. So we felt comfortable in approving the budget as modified.
so is it closer to Manamint Point, or is it closer to the? She's looking at something, okay.
Yes, thank you. Bear with me. I apologize.
It's okay.
I'm going to take a guess, but I'm pretty sure. Don't,
Is it by the
hold me
outlet?
totally to it, but I believe where you have the bathrooms, so Lee Hartman, Director of Planning and Development. So as you have the condominiums, and then you have a public bathroom, the porta potties that were set up this year. You have the access to there. I believe it's from that area towards the condominiums, that 500, that would be the 500 feet.
All right,
To the
closer
left.
to Manamint Point.
To the left, yeah, towards Manamint Point. To the
Okay.
left, I think, is all privately owned, and then once you get to the condos, that's privately owned.
Okay. Just curious, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
So mine's also related to this as also the chair of the Natural Resources Committee. So with the staffing being reduced to this one supervisor, will they be on just weekends or will they be there throughout the week?
That supervisor would take the place of the current staffing. There are no, again, lifeguards or staff there Monday through Thursday. So the beach supervisor would be the current protocol of the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Thank you. And
Thank
for
you.
a follow-up, after the Friday through Sunday, would they be going to other beaches and parks, or is just the 3 days that they're scheduled for their salary?
Yes, thank you. All right. This specific position is for the White Horse Beach for those 3 days, this beach supervisor position.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Richards has a question for you.
So what is the pay difference between the beach supervisor and the lifeguards that we were staffing prior to this year?
Apologize, my audio is on. It's a cost savings of approximately, I want to say it's 33,000, but then minus the 6,000. So it is about $27,000 savings.
Does that include, so is the beach supervisor a full-time position?
No, it's just 3 days a week, a very part-time position. There's not, it's a seasonal, there are no benefits.
How many lifeguards were there before?
I believe there were 3 lifeguards before. that transitioned, that rotated.
Other questions?
I was waiting, thought I was just
No,
waiting
she
for an
replied.
answer. I'm sorry?
She replied.
What the difference would be if we... Okay. I'm going to respond with, I think, having 3 people keeping an eye on White Horse Beach with the increased number of shark sightings that we've seen along Cape Cod and the east coast of Massachusetts. I think 3 people keeping an eye on the waters in our residents is better than 1, is my thought. And I would make an amendment. I would like to make a motion to amend and that we stay with the 3 lifeguards and increase that budget item for that reason, to stay with 3 lifeguards versus a beach supervisor.
Are you making a motion to amend?
I am making a motion to amend.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Malaguti has seconded. Ms. Richards, amend. Do we have any discussion? Yes, we have lots of discussion. Mr. Lally first, then I'm going to go to Mr. Malaguti, and then I'm going to look the other way and see if there's anybody else.
In past years, I've noticed police patrols at White Horse Beach. Well, is that still happening in the last year or so? Do we expect that to continue to happen?
The police presence would continue as they've had in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Malaguti is next.
Thank you. I support Christine's argument. I know my committee that I chair has also had concerns about this as well. I would be amendable for a little down and maybe 2 if necessary, but I don't think having just a supervisor is, in my opinion, adequate, even though the incidents have been low, because there's always that one incident that could always backfire and change the outcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malaguti. I'm going to go to Mr. Snyder, then Mr. Brindisi, and then back to Mr. Dunn.
Thank you very much. I don't think that this committee can actually add employees. I don't think that that's something that is in our purview, and I would ask Mr. Canty if that is correct.
I think we're adding to the budget, we're not adding employees. I think the motion
But
from
you are, in
us.
essence, you're adding employees by saying you want to put 3 people in there and putting 27,000 or whatever it is.
There is a question for Mr. Canty, if you could clarify for us, please.
So neither the Advisory and Finance Committee nor town meeting can mandate the hiring of any specific employee or the retention of any specific employee. That is an executive function. So this committee or town meeting more broadly could allocate funds for 3 lifeguards to be maintained, but that whether those positions would be maintained or not would be an executive decision. If the funds are allocated and not expended on those salaries throughout the year, they would flow to free cash, or they would be available for transfer requests as needed, as was described earlier.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Canty. Mr. Dunn, the floor is yours.
I just want to ask a clarifying question if I can. How many are on duty at the same time? Like if we had 3 lifeguards, for example, last year, are all 3 of them on duty together, or are they scheduled differently?
That is a great question. Let me just double check on the information on the specifics of the lifeguard staffing. I am in contact with our rec director, so just bear with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back and address that question, but in the meantime, Mr. Lawler, the floor is yours, and then we're going to come back to Ms. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to throw some reality onto this. It's a $325 million budget. We're talking about $22,000. We're talking about public safety. And let's keep it at that level, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawler. Back with Ms. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Lawler. I totally agree with that, and we would not be adding staff. We would be maintaining the current level of staff. In addition, I would argue that if we have one person, that one person is likely to have a day off, call in sick, need to go to lunch, breaks, all of those things, and having backup staff at the very least, in addition to another set of eyes, is definitely prudent. Because that one person cannot cover that amount of distance 8 hours a day, 3 days a week, for the entire summer without knowing if that person is going to be taking any time off. And that includes July 3rd and 4th as well, according to our website.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Richards. Mr. Brindisi, Town Manager, I see your digital hand. And then I don't. Okay.
Yeah, hello, sorry, I'm going to try to answer a lot of these questions. So first, I know that Michelle Brady mentioned that there's 3 lifeguards that have been on duty historically. The area that we're talking about is at the main entrance where the ADA accessible mat is located. And it's about, I'd say it's probably about 300 feet to the right of that area. That's where you see the 3 lifeguard stands that are located right before you get to the condominium. So that's the stretch of White Horse Beach we're talking about that's been guarded over the years. This isn't a matter about reducing the budget. Quite frankly, if we needed more money to provide lifeguard services, we'd be asking for it. This is a fact of the current environment to adequately staff lifeguards and have them trained and have them be available. These 3 lifeguards all work together. They work together because they have to rotate their breaks. So for example, you can't have 2 lifeguards on duty at once, because if one has to take a break, that means there's only 1 lifeguard to staff the entire beach area. So when they rotate, they'll have 2 lifeguards watching the beach and 1 person will be taking a break. So the alternative solution to a staffing problem is what we're proposing, to have a supervisor there who is patrolling the beach, who is ensuring safety on the beach, would certainly be trained in basic CPR and AED use, and would have the ability to contact first responders when and if necessary. Certainly wouldn't have the skills to enter the water and save somebody. That would be the purpose of a lifeguard. The police department will continue to patrol this, as Ms. Barrett talked about. We have typically 2 police officers that are patrolling the beach on a routine basis. They have a UTV that's already co-located right outside of the main entrance. So we appreciate that you want to add an additional $22,000 to provide additional lifeguards. But the problem is that we don't know if we're going to be able to staff it appropriately, as I just previously outlined. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brindisi, for the clarification. I see Mr. Malaguti, your hand is up. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So based upon what was just said about the rotating of staff due to breaks, who replaces this one when they're on their break? And not to laugh at but I'm just stating, if there's one person, would we be shunting another person from another beach to go over there? And this is sort of a two-part question, and what is the individual cost of a single lifeguard in case I make an amendment to Ms. Richards' motion?
I don't have those costs in front of me right now. I don't have that budget in front of me. I was just trying to fill in some of the white space with some of the questions that came up.
No, that was a general one for anyone to answer that was able for the cost. I just threw it in there because it was pertinent to my question. Thank you.
I can get you, Everett, the hourly rate for lifeguards.
Okay, would that satisfy you, Mr. Malaguti? Okay, we will move along while we wait for you, Ms. Brady, to come back with that answer. Yes, all the way in the corner. Ms. O'Connor, the floor is yours.
I just wanted to say, we had a pretty thorough discussion about this, and I don't think this was anything that was made in haste without concerns for safety. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's important to put a little context into it. I asked how many incidents there were over the last few years, and I think there was one. Don't quote me. So this is a pretty low-risk area. But I understand the reaction. That was the one that we had as well. As we discussed it, our concerns were satisfied. So I understand the immediate feedback, but I think that this was a responsible decision that was made.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Trudell, the floor is yours.
Listening to the presentation and even the questions that we asked tonight, I am opposed to amending it because we have supervisory personnel who are competent. They've made a study, they've made a recommendation. I think we should respect their professionalism.
Okay, and to remind everybody, we still have a motion on the table to amend. We're in discussion. Yes, Ms. Richards, the floor is yours.
So I think if I heard Mr. Brindisi correct, that this beach supervisor would not be going in the water. So if we had a resident who was out in the water having trouble swimming and perhaps in danger of drowning, we do not have a lifeguard who is trained to go out or even allowed to go out in the water and save this person. So in that regard, hey, I'm a competent swimmer, and anybody who lives near the water should have swimming lessons, but not everybody is. It's a public beach, and we should have lifeguards, especially White Horse Beach, which, as we all know, is pretty crowded, with some obvious dangers in the water. And I think one person entrusted to police the beach and watch out for swimmers that could possibly be drowning but not be able to save them and only be able to call EMTs or police. I think that's a lot to ask of that one person. Thank you.
Thank you for that perspective. Yes, and Mr. Brindisi, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks. So I can appreciate everyone's concern about not having lifeguards. I share the same concern. I had this conversation with the commissioner and with the rec director before we move forward in this fashion. But just keep in mind that White Horse Beach is a very large beach. It stretches all the way from Priscilla all the way down to Manamint Point Road, and that's probably 3/4 of a mile approximately. And the area we're talking about is approximately 300 feet of beach. So we have a significant area of the beach that's already unguarded. So the risk certainly increases slightly, but we already have a significant risk at this beach right now, given the fact that a very large percentage, I would say upwards of 80% of the beach is currently not guarded.
Thank you, Mr. Brindisi. Okay, Mr. Malaguti and Mr. Lawler, you're on deck.
Thank you. This is
Mr.
more
Dunn is in the hole.
This is more of a comment, but while I agree that all of them are competent and do their jobs, I have to answer to a lot of people as well too, as chair of a committee that oversees these 5 beaches as well too. And this is enforcement and protection are 2 of our highest priorities on there. Also, I don't know if the Management Steering Committee has also gotten this as well too, to hear that there'll be no staffing basically at their beach as well too. Plus, with this, we need to make sure that it's safe. Just because that it's a small portion of the beach, that's the public's portion that needs to be supervised. The rest of it is association or privately owned, so that's why the rest of it is vacant from lifeguard protection. And also to add, this could change within the next few months, depending on the meetings and the study being done by Bridgewater State University and a number of departments and committees on the entire beaches and policies and pond policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malaguti. I'm going to go to, Mr. Brindisi, do you want to comment directly on that?
I just wanted to clarify that the, what I say, the northerly part, most northerly part of Whitehorse Beach that abuts Priscilla Beach is all public access over by that boat ramp over there by the Full Sail. That's a public beach in that area that is currently not guarded or supervised. And I would say that once the town completes the transaction of acquiring the Full Sail parcels and creates public parking, we probably will have even more residents using that part of the public access as well. So again, this is not a debate about whether we think having lifeguards there is important or not. This is about our ability to not staff appropriately these beaches with lifeguards.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brindisi. I'm going to go to Mr. Lawler, and I have Mr. Dunn in the waiting.
Can we move to the amendment, vote amendment?
We could. I'll let Mr. Dunn make one more comment, and...
That was my question, too.
Well, okay. So I will close out discussion, and we will take a vote on whether to amend the lifeguard situation. And all right, so Ms. Richards, please state your amendment once again for us to vote.
Okay, I need to word this. I didn't quite, what was it, 27,000? I will amend, make an amendment, make a motion to amend the recreation budget by increasing the salary line item by $27,000 with the provision that we maintain, and maintain 3 lifeguards that we've had in the past at Whitehorse Beach.
Can I ask a point of order? I don't think that we're allowed to make that provision. I think that we're allowed to adjust the budget, but not to mandate that the executive hire a certain set of
It goes
employees.
back to what Mr. Canty said earlier, that we can put it in the budget, but only the executive of the town can decide where that goes for personnel costs. So we'll strike the part about the provision, and if I could read that back, or a motion.
Okay, I'm going to withdraw my motion to amend.
Okay. All right, so that brings us back to our,
So I would like to make a motion to restore full funding to these positions.
okay, isn't that what basically your motion was, Ms. Richards?
But you're talking about the line items, right? Not a provision that they be required to.
Correct.
Okay, so the verbiage would be a motion to amend the recreation budget by increasing the salary line item by $27,000, period.
Correct.
Okay. Everybody clear on that? So we are going to take a vote.
Need a second?
Please.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a first from Mr. Malaguti and a second from Mr. Howard. And Ms. Butler, how do you vote on that amendment?
No.
Mr. Dunn?
No.
Mr. Green?
No.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Mr. Lally?
No.
Mr. Lawler?
No.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
No.
Mr. Pizarro?
No.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
No.
Ms. Tompkins?
No.
Mr. Trudell?
No.
So we have 2 in favor, 11 opposed, 0 abstentions. The motion does not carry. We go back, yes, Mr. Lally, would you like to motion to approve the budget as stated?
So moved.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Dunn, would you like to second that motion?
Second.
Okay, so we're going back to the beginning to approve the Subcommittee E budget as presented.
We have one more division to discuss.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not a biggie,
Go ahead. I was a little premature.
but it is important. It's the Commission on Disabilities, for which it is level funded. And there's some more detail about what the commission does, shown on this slide. So the subcommittee recommends approval of this budget. And with that,
Thank you. Okay.
completes-
I still move it.
And I still
Thank you.
second it.
Thank you. Good. All right. So we are voting to approve Subcommittee E budget as stated by Mr. Howard in his presentation. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
We had discussion. Did we have enough discussion? All right. Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
yes,
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
No.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
And Ms. Richards?
No.
And Mr. Snyder? Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
So we have 11 in favor, 2 opposed, 0 abstentions. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting accept and approve Subcommittee E budget as presented tonight.
thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Howard, and thank you, Ms. Brady, and everybody else that was involved in that discussion.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that brings up Subcommittee F, which is the schools co-chairs, Mr. Dunn and Mr. Lawler. This year, we loaded up on this committee putting more than half of our members on this committee due to the outsized budget compared to all the other budgets in the town. So take it away, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bless you. I'd like to first thank the committee, my co-chair, Tim Lawler, Emily Tompkins, Mark Snyder, Christine Richards, Molly O'Connor, Everett Malaguti, and Joseph Lally. I did that in reverse alphabetical order since we usually do it the opposite. And I would like to sincerely thank Dr. Campbell and Dr. Blaisdell, who I think spent an ungodly amount of time with us over the last few months. So I appreciate your availability, all of the information that you've given to us, and the time that you've spent meeting with us and helping us to reach, well, I guess nothing yet, so, but helping us to understand this. I'm going to ask if I can skip over the first section, and if we can talk about the out-of-district transportation and the Medicaid reimbursement first. Those are the only two sections where there's a recommendation from this subcommittee, so if that's appropriate. There's about a $7,000 increase in the Medicaid reimbursement line item and $2,005 increase in the out-of-district transportation. I think we should probably vote this separately since we don't have a recommendation on the other part. I don't know if.
So your committee is making a recommendation on those two items?
Correct.
Okay, so we should vote on those now, and then after you finish with the education budget, we'll put it all together.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does
Mr.
anyone have any
Lally?
questions about either of those? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Okay, seeing and hearing no questions. Mr. Lally, would you like to
I
motion?
move those sections of the budget.
Okay.
Out-of-district transportation and Medicaid reimbursement.
Medicaid reimbursement. Okay.
Need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, so Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
And Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Bizzarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
So 13 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions on the Medicaid reimbursement and the out-of-district transportation. So that takes us to,
Thank you. That takes us to the Plymouth Public Schools budget. The Select Board recommended budget was $127,229,274. An increase of about $5.8 million or 5.9% in personnel services, and an increase of $48,529 or 0.1% for all other expenses. There's currently 7,116 students at the Plymouth Public Schools. Some of the challenges that we discussed with Dr. Campbell and Dr. Blaisdell were an increased long-term behavioral and mental health remediation and support of students, the high cost of transportation, an increase in the number of high-needs students, which over the past 10 years has grown from 39% to almost 65% between 2015 and now. Utility costs, declining state and federal grants, and of course, as always, unfunded mandates. I would request that we open this up to the full committee because the subcommittee voted 4-4 and has no recommendation at this point.
okay, and that was my fault for having an even number of people on your committee. Yes, Mr. Lawler, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted no on this budget, and I voted with a lot of compassion. And this is my third cycle working the school budget, And it takes an awful lot of effort and understanding. You just can't land right into this budget. You really have to understand it. It takes a while. It's taken me 3 full cycles to understand what the numbers are all about. There are a lot of numbers. It's a $191 million spend for the town. A lot of money. 63% of our budget goes there, our monies. And to me, it was, Mr. Chairman, it was all about one number. And that's why I voted no, because it was only recent that we had a meeting with the town manager and the finance director to finally understand a single number. And this is all about making the town understand it's one budget, it's the town budget. We pay all our monies into the town through our taxes, and the town pays for the school budget. That's my feeling. And the question is, how much money does the town pay for our students' education? Bottom line. And it's only until recent that I've understood this number. And the number is not 127 million. It's $191 million, which represents 63% of the total spend of the 325 million. It's a simple, simple number. It's a simple understanding. And that's why I voted no, because I didn't know what the number was until recent. What was the total spend of the town for our students' education? So now that I have the number and I understand the number, the finance director was very explicit on where all the numbers are. This, you look at this the spreadsheet. It explains everything to do with the 191. I truly only want to bring this number in front of the town so that the town understands there's a number. It's not 127, it's 191. If I accomplish anything on this third cycle, it's understanding that there is a single number. For state reporting, it's 127 million. But if you really want to know what our town spends on education, it's 191 million. And that is my only point. That is it. So next year, next cycle, on my fourth cycle, we'll finally know what the number is. We'll have a same type of spreadsheet. And we'll be, once we understand these numbers, we'll be able to question them and understand them with more depth. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Lawler, and I can attest that he spent a lot of hours, and I know people in the audience know that too, to really get to know the deep dive into what goes into 63% of our tax dollars. So credit to you for your tenacity and your hard work and that of your committee. So with that said, Ms. Richards, the floor is yours.
So I also want to say, I also voted no to recommend this budget during our subcommittee meeting. And a large part of that reasoning, for a couple of reasons. The biggest one was the way in which we received our information. And we received it in many, many, many bits and pieces. However, after speaking with Dr. Blaisdell and having a discussion about how a better way that we can digest this information and how it is presented to the subcommittee, I'm happy to say that next year we should be receiving this in a much better way so that we can digest it properly and we can, it's understood so that we can see that number of 191 million in a better and more cohesive way. The other couple of reasons why I voted no were, one, the transportation fees. Many of our fees many of the ways we try and offset the fees in the school department are either parking or transportation or athletic fees or and over the last 3 years that I've been on this subcommittee, the first 2 years I argued that we should be increasing the bus fees. They hadn't been increased in 25 years. And last year they were increased. So this year I asked, what are we doing to increase some fees? I'm not talking large amounts, but with each year, fees go up. Fees should be going up every year, $5. It's not a big chunk of money, but if you wait 25 years between fee increases, it is going to be a big chunk of money because things are going up. Parking fees have not gone up. So those were some of the things that I was arguing for, that, parking for our students who are driving, it's a privilege, not a right. They should be paying for their parking. So those are the reasons why I voted no. However, that those are not going to be a showstopper for me tonight. I am going to be voting in favor of this budget. I think it is the right thing for the town and the right thing for the students of the town of Plymouth. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Any other confessions while we're in the booth here? Mr. Snyder, would you like to follow on?
Can't hear you.
You gotta look.
I echo my colleagues, I voted no as well. And much of it was because some of the stuff that was produced was missing information that I thought was necessary. But through my own research and through others, I'm now satisfied enough to vote yes on this budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Snyder. And Ms. O'Connor, do you have a confession today?
I voted yes. I believe that, Dr. Campbell and Dr. Blaisdell are being good stewards of the funds allocated. I was wondering if anyone can provide clarity. Thank you, Mr. Lawler, for your tenacity here. I'm just curious, why do we have funds that are not included in this budget? If anyone here?
The way
Education-related funds that don't go into the
Okay,
education.
Ms. Barrett is an expert at explaining this.
So I believe the number that Mr. Lawler is referring to is, within the budget, we break down the whole operating budget, and we broke down town and school. The school portion is 61%, the town portion is 39%. We provided documentation on that detail to come up to a total school number, which was $184,009,629. That included items that were in all those other subcommittee reports that we voted tonight. That comes up to the $184 million. What he asked for after that was, how much have we spent in capital for the school? So the additional almost $7.7 million is capital that you voted in Article 13 And you will also vote at the special town meeting in Article, I believe it's Article 5.
5, yes. Correct.
So that gets you the 191 million. He also asked for big picture numbers, so I gave him some grant numbers, but he didn't understand those. He only understood the 191. So that's the 191. So you're not voting the 191, you're only voting 127 million, which is the school portion within this general fund operating budget.
All right, I'm
Thank you.
going to go to Mr. Dunn first and then over to Mr. Lawler.
Thank you. I appreciate people coming around on this. I think it's important. I just want to point out that during our discussion, we didn't have any amendments, so the option was either to vote to fund the schools at 127 million or to just close the schools. That's not a real choice to me. I think that we need to fund this. I appreciate all the time that was spent with staff with us on this. We got more information on this budget than we've ever had on any budget. Personally, I think I had plenty of information to vote from the beginning, but I appreciate people digging in and getting more information. But I just want to urge people to vote for this. I think do we want to close our schools? That's what a no vote is to not open the schools. No one's made a suggestion, no one's made an amendment, no amendments were made, so I don't know what the issue is. So I would urge everyone to vote for this.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm going to go to Mr. Lawler, but remember, we're in the questioning phase, not the discussion phase, because we don't have a motion to approve yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure that we're not tainted by the financial director's last comment. It is the bottom line, let me ask, the question was, how much money do we spend out of the town budget? How much money do we spend out of the town budget? $325 million. That is earmarked. That is earmarked for the support of our school system and students. And the number is 191. That's the answer. I asked it several times, and that's what I got. Thank you.
Okay, going back to Mr. Dunn, I feel like I'm watching a tennis match here.
I'd just like to clarify, and I think that I appreciate the finance director's clarification. What we're voting on is the 127 million. The total spend might be 191 million. That was spent, or that was already allocated in other budgets. So those are in other areas. So when our subcommittee is tasked with the 127 million to operate the schools, not the outside funding, I appreciate the context, but in the context of what we're actually voting on, I think it was an important clarification that the finance director made, that that's not what we're voting on, is the 191. We're voting on the 127.
Okay, hold on. Mr. Howard, and then I'll go to Mr. Green, did you have your hand? No, and I'll go to Mr. Lawler.
Yeah, I'd be interested in having the subcommittee vote again on the 127 million, so that the rest of the Advisory and Finance Committee understands better where the subcommittee stands on approving the school budget.
Okay, well, I think it's evident that it's no longer a 4-4, which would be an approval. So I think we're there already.
Understood, but I think for the record, it'd be great to have the subcommittee give us an updated vote so that we can document that.
Okay, I'm going to put that in the hands of the chairs, Mr. Lawler and Mr. Dunn.
I'd like
Yeah,
a
just one thing-
clarifying question.
One thing real fast. I am in favor of voting yes on the 127. I think everyone is misreading me here. I voted no because I did not have this information. I did not have all the information to understand the big picture. And once I got that information, I'm fine. So the 127 is okay. I'm all right with that. It's just that we just need to look at this much differently. And that's all I'm saying. So I'm okay with the 127.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Dunn, but I would say to Mr. Howard's point, once everybody has voted, I think it will be evident what the subcommittee, how the subcommittee voted.
I understand that, but I'm just saying that in the documentation that we have, the subcommittee recommends no recommendation by a vote of 4-4. If the subcommittee no longer believes that's an accurate representation of their votes, then I would like to see the opportunity for them to restate their vote at this time.
And I have a point of clarification. Would that require someone who voted no to make a motion to reconsider? Or what would be, it was 4-4, there's no prevailing side.
I would defer to Mr. Canty for some legal advice here. And we're not paying for it, by the way, out of our 150 budget.
I appreciate that. So no motion prevailed, so there's no need to, but you also didn't post a meeting of the Budget Subcommittee as part of this. I would point out that procedurally, since all your votes are roll call and reported as such in your book that's given to town meeting, that it would be self-evident if members of your Budget Subcommittee changed their votes at the roll call of the entire committee, that would be clearly delineated within your wider vote and does not require a separate vote, which, in my opinion, would violate the open meeting law.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for that clarification. Mr. Dunn?
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval to town meeting of the Plymouth Public Schools budget.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Butler. So I have a motion by Mr. Dunn and a second by Ms. Butler to approve Subcommittee F's budget. And any further discussion? Have we, Mr. Lally, you had your hand up earlier. You're good? Okay. So having said that, seeing no further discussion, we'll go to the vote to approve Subcommittee F's budget as presented by Mr. Lawler and Mr. Dunn, co-chairs. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
No.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
So by a vote of 12 in favor, 1 opposed, and 0 abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends to town meeting that they approve Subcommittee F as presented tonight. And again, I thank everybody for your hard work, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Blaisdell, also Ms. Barrett and Mr. Brindisi for having a very important couple of hour meeting that really clarified a lot for Mr. Lawler and I. So thank you all for being a part of this. I think we're a better process now for having gone through. I know it was painful, but I think we all have a better understanding of what we need to do our jobs and what you guys do for your jobs. So I appreciate that. All right. So last but not least is Subcommittee G, Enterprise Funds. Do you want me to get up to the podium? Yeah. I was getting comfortable here, guys.
I can run the clicker for you.
Oh, please, thank you. Sure. So at this point, I'm going to have to. Okay, so Steve Nairman, the chair of the Enterprise Funds, along with Gail Butler, Everett Malaguti, and David Trudell. Just for people who are not familiar with the enterprise funds, they are self-funding, which means that they have a revenue function to pay their expenses, so they don't necessarily use town funds, but they still, since they are a town functioning operation, need town approval for their budgets. So that's why we're here. There are 5 different ones, and I will go through them, and we're starting with water first. Okay, so the Water Division of the DPW is responsible for the operation and maintenance of Plymouth's water treatment, transmission, and distribution systems, including 12 wells, 10 pump houses, and 4 booster stations. The head of the division is Mr. Peter Gordon, who is the water superintendent. He is here with us tonight, and we appreciate your participation in this process. The primary source of revenue for this enterprise fund comes from the ratepayers who get their water from the town. The revenue stream is strong and continues to grow. Costs are higher across the board, especially electricity, heat, propane, and increased mandated water testing, which is affected by continued increasing costs of chemicals. We had this same challenge last year as well. Mr. Gordon presented a level-funded budget for fiscal 2026 for the total water enterprise fund, actually down 2.1%, or $139,041. He stated that this includes a 2.4% rise in salaries and wages due to contractual increases, a 5.8% increase in longevity pay, and a substantial 11.34% increase in vacation earned time buyback. The proposed budget appropriation for 2026 is $6,346,287. This fund also picks up indirect costs, which was $1.7 million, for a total proposed fiscal 2026 budget of $8,122,255. The committee voted 4-0 to recommend approval of this budget. So would you like to go through each, vote for each, or do we? Okay, so we're going to vote for each. Okay. So are there any questions? All right. So Ms. O'Lally has a motion to approve the water budget enterprise fund. Ms. O'Connor, would you please second that motion?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any discussion amongst the committee? Okay, let me grab my roll call. Okay. All right, Ms. Butler, how do you vote on the Water Enterprise Fund?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
So the Advisory and Finance Committee unanimously, on a vote of 13-4, 0 against, and 0 abstentions, recommends that town meeting approve the Water Enterprise Fund from Subcommittee G. All right. What's up next? What are you putting up there for me? I can't read it. I can't read it. What is it? Thank you. Sewer. Okay, so we are on the Sewer Enterprise Fund. The Sewer Division of the DPW is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the town's sanitary sewer collection and treatment systems. The division is headed by wastewater superintendent Doug Pinard, who is with us today here. Thank you, Doug, for your participation in this. The primary source of revenue for the enterprise fund is the rates paid by the sewer system's users. Fees paid by septic haulers are another significant source of revenue. Mr. Bernard stated that the current state of the economy has made it a challenge to manage and keep pace with a level service budget while addressing the repairs, maintenance, and processes required by the system. Some of the challenges stem from the age of the Plymouth sewer system, which should be no surprise to anybody who's lived in this town for a while. Budget shows increases due to increasing cost of living adjustments and increased costs for the wastewater treatment plant due to increased costs of disposal. Mr. Bernard proposed a 4.5% increase in the overall budget of the sewer enterprise fund. Personnel services rose 1.7%. Other expenses rose 1.1%, including a 2.5% rise in repair and maintenance. But the 12.6% increase in debt service short-term interest accounted for much of the overall rise. The budget that was proposed for 2026 is $8,977,272. This enterprise fund was apportioned indirect costs of $511,173 for a total of $9,488,445. Also, some initiatives. Mr. Bernard laid out 6 areas of focus: enhance, improve financial forecasting, develop a comprehensive wastewater management plan, implement a supervisory control and data acquisition system, place security cameras to prevent continued destruction of property, working on a corrective action plan to develop a schedule for identifying and addressing deficiencies in the sewer collection system, all 60 miles worth, and developing sewer regulations and rules. Our committee voted 4-0 to approve this subcommittee, the sewer subcommittee. Any questions? Nope. Okay, great.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Howard, please.
Thank you. I had a question on the focus area to place security cameras to prevent continued destruction of property. Could you address what destruction is taking place, and is this not part of the equipment line item?
Good evening, everyone. Doug Pinard, wastewater superintendent. The security cameras that I'm talking about in this article was monies that I had gone to the previous fiscal year to provide security cameras at the Water Street pump station, our main pump station down on Water Street. So it does multiple things. It provides security for any vandalism at the pump station, and also if we do have to monitor the station, if we did have a high weather event, we can safely remotely observe the station without having to go down there.
So I'm not sure that you addressed what is stated as continued destruction of property. Has there been damage done to the Water Street station?
No, it's to prevent.
So it's just to prevent?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And was that not an equipment request, or?
Yes, it was an equipment request that was approved at town meeting. It's that project was just completed this month.
So is it a capital, it's in this year's budget?
It actually was in last year's.
Last year's budget, okay, thank you.
It was just an update for everyone to say that project was being, moving forward, and it was just actually finished this month. They're actually installed and operating.
Got it, thank you. Just one other question here. You stated at the end, developing sewer regulations and rules. Can you give us just a couple sentences describing your intent there?
So currently, the town of Plymouth doesn't have official sewer regulations. So part of my task since I've been here be 4 years in May. I've been working to establish official rules and regulations for the town. So currently, I've worked with the DPW director, the engineering in town, and worked with engineering service to come up with official regulations for the town for sewer regulations. And some of those regulations are related to new construction and what some of those contractors are allowed to do, and also repairs and things like that when, if there's a repair in a town's right-of-way, or even on private property, you know, we're holding those individuals to a higher standard to make sure that they're done correctly.
Would grease traps, as described by public health, be included in those?
They are mentioned in sewer regs, but that is mainly through the health department, and we also, that was something else that we implemented recently, is the fog regulations with Board of Health, Health Department.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Snyder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the wastewater superintendent. The increase in the debt service is high. What is the total debt for the enterprise fund?
Lynn?
Are you referring to total debt service or total debt outstanding?
Mr. Snyder?
The total debt that we're paying off through debt service.
Okay, so the total debt outstanding for the sewer enterprise fund? I'll get that for you. Just give me a second. So, let's see. Sewer Enterprise Fund, total outstanding debt at June 30th, 24, because that's the last time that we calculated this, was almost 10 million outstanding. And then we have some new projects that are coming that'll add to that, but it's about 10 million right now.
And do we know how much the upcoming ones are going to add to that?
Yep, if you give me just a minute, if there's another question.
Mr. Lally, I believe you had your hand up a minute ago.
Well, I was going to pass, but since we have a moment, I think an example of the sewer regulation might be what we ran into in the Oak Street project, where the sewer connection from the house to the main had to be changed to meet the new standard for, is that an example of sewer regulation?
The Oak Street project?
The Oak Street renovation house, we had to change the project had to change the connection to the sewer main to meet the standard.
They ultimately did not have to make a change.
Thank you. I was just trying to give you an example, Mr. Howard, of that stuff.
Ms. Barrett's back to Chris.
So the only new project that has not started or has not been borrowed yet is the wastewater treatment plant effluent tertiary filter, which was, it's almost $9.5 million project, but we're expected to receive a federal grant to reduce that by about $2.5 million.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions for me or Mr. Pennard? No, hearing and seeing none. Ms. Tompkins, would you please move to approve the sewer budget, the sewer subcommittee budget?
So moved.
Thank you. And Mr. Howard, would you care to second that motion?
Second.
So we have a first from Ms. Tompkins and a second from Mr. Howard to approve the sewer enterprise fund budget. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wait, I'm sorry, Mr. Lally, did you get your hand up in time?
Too late.
Too late.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
You're getting punchy on me, guys. Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell.
Yes.
So the Advisory and Finance Committee unanimously, with a vote of 13 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, recommends town meeting approve and pass Subcommittee G, SOAR Enterprise Funds budget. Okay, so that brings us to the third one, which is solid waste. The Solid Waste Division of the Department of Public Works is responsible for the management, operation, and maintenance of the Manomet Transfer Station with recycling, materials transport, administration of sticker sales, and violation processing. It has been headed by Bill Coyle, DPW Director for a while now, and Mr. Coyle is here in the audience, and again, I appreciate your participation in this budget process. The budget has a 2.7% rise over the 2025 revised. Budget appropriation is $958,417, added in with indirect costs of $430,722 for a total of $1,389,139. The $25,000 variance was due in part to an increase in wages of $10,557, according to Mr. Coyle. Other expenses rose 2.5% or $15,000, entirely due to the increase in tipping fees for cash. Our subcommittee believes that this enterprise is well-run. The use of the Manomet Transfer Station remains fairly consistent. However, challenges in the greater waste disposal and recycling industries continue to present themselves, as well as rising expenses. Mr. Coyle stated that he has a focus on taking items out of the solid waste stream early in the process. Our committee voted 4-0 to recommend approval of the solid waste operations budget. Are there any questions for me or for Mr. Coyle? Yes, Mr. Malaguti.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I didn't mention this during the subcommittee, but I just wanted clarification. The cost for the pay-as-you-throw bags, are they still sufficient for covering all the operations? And was there potential in the near future for increase in those costs?
I think what you were asking was an increase in the charge at the stores for the bags?
Yes.
Okay, so there is no recommendation, we recommended that, it wasn't last year, but it was the year before. We increased the bag price at the stores to cover the cost of disposal and transportation for the MSW. So there is no intent to increase that.
Okay.
Right now.
And those are sufficiently covering?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, Mr. Howard, I see your hand is up.
Mr. Coyle, you stated that you are focusing on taking items out of the solid waste stream and fully support this initiative. I think we've talked about this in last year as well. Could you give us an update on the status of this project?
Sure. Bill Coyle, DPW Director. With me is James Downey as well, who's also working to oversee the solid waste division. So there's several items that we are pursuing. I believe a few weeks ago, we had gone before the Select Board for the creation of a solid waste recycling advisory committee. So one of the items that we're looking at is the creation of basically a swap shop, take something, leave something, swap. So the committee, we currently have, I believe, 6 candidates. We're still entertaining additional people that are interested. The hopes are that once the committee is formed between the committee members and other volunteers, we would staff this, take something, leave something, or swap shop. Initially, we were looking at probably opening on Saturdays. We recently received a grant for $6,000 from DEP for a purchase of a shed. We'll be looking to see whether or not we need additional storage areas. We'll be working with the committee as far as the best location to hold the swap shop. There's a couple of different areas that we're considering. So that's one item that we're excited about, and we're hoping if the interest really takes off, whether or not we expand that to Sundays as well. So that's one item. The other thing we're looking at is through a company called Black Earth, is using large toters at a Manamet transfer station for composting. Some other communities have successfully implemented this. It's something that we're looking to do as well. Just for, again, it's not a large area. We would start with probably 3 or 4 toters that we would fill up, and we would have small buckets that I believe people that would participate initially would be able to have for their own home, that they could put the materials in and then bring it to the transfer station. So that's another item, and then obviously trying to promote recycling and improving our recycling efforts as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Green.
Just curious if overall transfer station traffic per se is declining, and I ask this because for me personally, I started using the transfer station when I moved here, but then I paid for the sticker, I went and got the bags, I had to go get the bags all the time, I drove to the transfer station every week, and I did all the math out, and I said, what's my time worth doing all this? And it was negligible compared to just getting somebody to pick up the trash. So I know costs are different in other areas of the town, but I'm just curious if overall we're seeing less traffic or new people are moving in, they're signing up. Just what's the general trend?
Without having the numbers in front of me, I would say it's been consistent. It's been fairly steady. Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for the question.
Mr. Coyle.
Thank you.
Any further questions for me or Mr. Coyle? Hearing and seeing none. Let's see. Yep. Yes, Mr. Weber, would you like to make a public comment?
Just an attempt to clarify something that was in the report. Let's see. Maybe you could find it again in your notes. When you read, it's hard to see that from the audience, but when you read an issue about a tipping fee, you said a tipping fee for cash. I don't think that's what we want to project. Is that a typo?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, everyone's an expert. Thank you for that clarification. All right. Any other comments? No? Okay. Let's see. Ms. Butler, would you like to move to approve the solid waste operations
So moved.
budget? All right, great. And Mr. Lally, would you please second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. So we have a first from Ms. Butler, a second from Mr. Lally to approve the Subcommittee G solid waste operations budget. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on Subcommittee G solid waste operations?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell.
Yes.
The Advisory and Finance Committee, by a unanimous vote of 13 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, recommends town meeting approve Subcommittee G's fiscal year 2026 budget for solid waste operations. Okay, and I thank you again, Mr. Coyle, and the committee for working on that. All right, so we're going to go to airport, and I know I saw Mr. Cardello on the Zoom call. So the Plymouth Municipal Airport, home to more than 30 businesses, collectively employ more than 250 people. It's been in operation since 1934. Many of these businesses operate from privately constructed buildings located on the airport property, adding considerably to Plymouth's tax base. The types of businesses range from flight schools and maintenance facilities to law enforcement and medical air ambulance services. The subcommittee met with Airport Manager Matt Cardillo. The Airport Enterprise Fund provides for development, operation, and maintenance of the Plymouth Municipal Airport in a safe, efficient, and fiscally responsible manner that promotes general aviation. The airport helps stimulate the local economy and supports the community. Airport management is responsible for adhering to all federal, state, and local regulations. And so in the budget, the revenue for the operation of the airport is primarily generated through the sale of aviation fuel to aircraft owners. That's approximately 80% of the revenue. Landing and tie-down fees and land leases on the buildings that are on the airport property. So Mr. Cardillo is proposing a very modest 1.5% increase in fiscal year 2026 over the previous year, with personnel services costs up just 1.1%. The proposed wages increase was $7,991 due to step increases and cost of living increases per the OPEIU and COBRA contracts. And the two streams of revenue is fuel sales and land leases. Mr. Cardillo said that expenses will rise 1.5% to sewer maintenance, a new line item added due to the airport when it upgraded its wastewater treatment plant. That line item grew from $50,000 to $100,000. Heat and electric utility costs will also be increased to accommodate for higher utility rates. Our committee voted 4-0 to approve this budget as stated. The budget appropriation for fiscal 2026 was $3,802,724, with indirect costs apportioned at $433,477 for a total of $4,236,201. Any questions for me or Mr. Cardillo? Mr. Howard?
How big is the airport property?
As square acres?
Square acreage?
Mr. Cardillo?
Just over 750 acres.
750 acres.
Wow, wouldn't that make a great light industry site? I think it's time for the town to consider alternative uses of this property. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, Mr. Pizarro, would you please make a motion to approve Subcommittee G Airport Enterprise Fund budget?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder, could you please second that motion?
Happy to second it.
Thank you so much. We have a motion by Mr. Pizarro and a second by Mr. Snyder to approve the Airport Enterprise Fund as stated in this presentation. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to the vote. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on the Airport Enterprise Fund budget?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Okay, Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler? Mr. Lawler?
I know. Give me a second.
Oh.
No.
Okay. Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
No.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
Okay, so there were 10 votes in favor, 3 votes in opposition, and 0 abstentions. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve the fiscal 2026 budget for the Airport Enterprise Fund. And thank you, Mr. Cardillo, for being in attendance tonight. Okay, so the easiest one of the night is the Cable Enterprise Fund. Cable Enterprise Fund is made up of those nasty little fees that are on your cable bill from Verizon and Comcast. The sad part for the Cable Enterprise Fund is that more and more people are streaming, so those fees are dropping, not significantly, but they are dropping. The uses for those funds are for PAC TV, which is producing this meeting tonight, and the Plymouth Public Schools, which has their own cable show. The fund also receives approximately $10,000 annually in franchise fees that are retained by the town. Some $5,000 is budgeted for legal fees for negotiating contracts with Verizon and Comcast. The bulk of the funds received by the fund are transmitted to PAC TV and the Plymouth Public Schools to support public access television production. Revenue is generated from those fees, as I mentioned before. This is the only enterprise fund that does not absorb indirect costs. The proposed budget for fiscal 2026 is $1,545,000, and our committee voted 4-0 to recommend it. Any questions for me? Yes, Mr. Howard. There won't be any funds coming in, and I believe Mr. Brindisi was in that meeting and said, no, it's slowly declining.
Thank you.
And not to worry at this point. Yes, Mr. Malaguti.
Thank you. There's actually a few additions that need to be made to this, because it says the budget subcommittee was you, Mr. Neerman, Gail Butler, and Joe Lally not present, but that was not.
Yeah, what was put in the packet was from the previous year.
I was on that
Yeah.
subcommittee, Mr.
No,
Trudell.
No,
so-
I know you were, because the one in the packet is from last year, 2024, not 2025. The second one, I sent you a replace.
Oh, yeah. It was after the packet was printed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just
Yeah,
wanted to make sure in case
yeah,
anyone else had that question. Thank you.
Yeah, I had the last year's date and last year's committee and then sent an update right after it. So, yes, you are being credited as a 1/4 of the committee. Anybody else? No? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Green, would you please make a motion to approve the Enterprise Fund Cable Access?
Motion to approve Cable Access Fund.
Thank you. Mr. Trudell, would you please second that motion?
I second the motion.
Thank you. So we have a first from Mr. Green and a second from Mr. Trudell to approve the cable access budget. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on Subcommittee G cable access budget?
I'm sorry, what? Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Bizzarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
The Advisory and Finance Committee, by unanimous vote of 13 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, recommends town meeting approve Budget Subcommittee G Enterprise Funds as stated in this presentation. Okay, so that is our presentation. We're going to go into, anybody, did you have any comment you want to make?
So I just wanted to follow up with the question that was asked earlier regarding the sewer enterprise fund debt. The number that I gave, which was almost $10 million, that represents the debt that's outside the debt limit. There's another $23.5 million that's inside the debt limit. So I just wanted to correct that, because it's significantly higher than the 10 million. And the 23 million basically represents the repair that was done to the sewer main, yeah.
I just have a follow-up question. Are we getting anything back from the contractor or
So we,
from insurance?
we already did. So the total cost of that whole project was about 48.5 million, and we received approximately $23 million settlement from a lawsuit that we had with the contractor and designer. So the remaining ended up being the town share.
Did we use any ARPA money for?
The ARPA money wasn't around back then. It was 2015 when that happened.
Oh, all right. But the recent, with the recent water issues downtown,
So
was that ARPA money?
recent
that we
ARPA
used?
money paid for the Water Street Interceptor project and the flood barrier wall around the wastewater treatment pump station.
Just
Yep.
curious. Okay, thank you.
So Lynn, so what was the total out-of-pocket cost of Plymouth for the waterfront sewer project?
If you take the 48 million and you subtract the 23 million. So it's a little late. I'm not
20
thinking straightly.
About 25 million.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barrett, for that explanation. New, old, other business. Upcoming schedule, we have the spring specials next week. I know you guys are so excited to see everybody twice next week, Wednesday and Thursday, and then possibly the following Wednesday. It can't go on past that because that is the deadline for Jeanette to get the books together, so we got to like knock out these, I think we figured there's 11, I think we got it down to 11 warrants that we need to do over a couple of days.
Yes, there were 12 items on the warrant, but one of the items initially
already-
was on the annual warrant, so we've already heard it and voted it, and then it was moved to the special, so no other actions necessary. We've
Right.
already voted it.
So we got 11
No
to
change
do.
to any part of it.
And we have not gotten Eversource's information yet, and if they don't have it by next week, they will have to bring it to town meeting in the fall.
Maybe we should charge them a delivery fee of
Yeah.
$500 million, since that's what they love doing to us.
Well, that's about what my bill was. I just got close to it. Any other old, new, other business? All right, I know you're chomping at the bit to leave. So any public comment at this point? No. Hearing and seeing none, we will vote to adjourn. Actually, I need a motion first.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Malik. Okay, go ahead. Who said it?
I did.
All right, so we have a motion from Mr. Dunn, a second from Ms. Butler to adjourn, and somewhere I put my notes. Oh, well. I can't.
I vote yes.
All right, Ms. Butler, I'll go, Mr. Lally. Yes. Mr. Malaguti.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Ms. Richards.
Yes.
Mr. Lawler.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
We're voting
Mr.
out of
Trudell.
sequence. I vote yes.
Mr. Trudell.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins? Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
And last but not least, Mr. Bizzarro?
Yes.
And we have unanimous to adjourn at 10:24 PM. Thank you all for all that hard work that brought us to tonight's meeting.